Alrighty. I got everything cleaned up as good as it needs to be. It's not going to be perfect. I got all the, or most of the dirt off. I blew all the patches out. So we are ready to reassemble. I have already swapped out all the gaskets. These are all the new ones. This is bowl gasket. There's a new rubber air bypass valve thingy, air valve assembly diaphragm. There's a gasket for the top of this damper assembly, which there was not one before. It probably used to be there and was gone. This is the air bypass valve, which I guess explains why it's got sort of this cheater side here with a gasket. And it is spring loaded, so I could see how under vacuum or air pressure the spring would open and it would bypass it. So I get that. This is the compensating valve, which I take it is power valve by them. It does not have anything new, but I did ungunk it, so it does move freely on its own with that spring. It does have two gaskets that also had gone missing in the ages that it had sat. Everything else is cleaned up. We're pretty good to go. So I guess we're just gonna start reassembly from here, working this way, then here, back to the beginning. Okay, let's try this. This is basically, they call it like the cold start compensating valve. It's what would pass for part of a choke on most things not English. This is an idle speed set screw, basically. So is this. This is cold idle speed. This is base idle. So this has to set up against here so that as you would pull the choke, you're going to move that in sort of a camshaft or cam lobe like motion. So this is where this one goes. This one is spring loaded. It does sit flush up in there once you put it on, but it takes a second to do so. There we go. Get the spring to compress on the inside. It's not a big spring, it's a little one. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, and then like I said, that is a cam lobe motion to change your cold idle speed. So cold idle speed adjustment, base idle, and this is your choke. See it move the butterfly? Okay, doesn't move it much, doesn't need to move it much. And next is our compensating valve. Not overcompensating, apparently compensating just enough. So there is a gasket that goes at the bottom that seals it here, and then there is a gasket at the top that seals the outside of it. Then you basically just slip it together. And this is the cover for that compensating valve, also no gasket. Okay. Now our idle mixture screw we should probably put back on before we forget. Remember, 6.5 turns. It's mostly washed off, but it was 6.5. So half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Now, that is where it was, and it seemed to idle okay, so we'll just leave that alone. We are now on to our little air bypass valve. There, probably. I'm thinking it hung out like that. So that's what we're gonna do. And there's two different kinds of screws on this. There we go. The only thing I can think with the tapered seat is the tapered seat maybe aligns this piece so that all the passages are lined up no matter what. But you think if they were gonna do that, they would do more than one, because really you're only aligning this corner then. That's the only thing I can think of as to why that would happen, but that's my thought on it. So there you go. All right, needle and seat. This is our brand new needle and seat with brand new gasket type thingy. I'll pop down in here. It appears to be the same size, still a 1/2-inch wrench. So let's find out. I'll make sure the gasket's square. Yep, there we go. No, why would that be the same size? So it went from a 1/2-inch needle and seat to a 14 for unknown reasons other than what country this was made in. It's apparently not friendly to standard numbers. Let's see. All right. So the shiny side that does not look like it's been underwater forever or in fuel forever, that's the top of your float. This is the part that was down in the fuel. I don't believe I'm going to need to float test this one we're just gonna go ahead and put it back together since it wasn't flooding. I'm gonna hope and pray that it continues to not flood and still be good. If you wanted to, you could put this in water and submerge it with your fingers and look for bubbles, but I'm not gonna do that. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna leave the float setting alone as well, probably. If you're going to adjust it, the only way to adjust it would be to bend the tang of the float right here, and that would affect how far up or down this float sat when closed. Here is our bowl gasket. You should be fine. Okay. There we go. Fuel bowl. We've got 4 long screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 shorties. 1, 2. Now to deal with this whole top part. Air valve assembly hooja-majabi. Alrighty, this goes on here first. So a new rubber gasket, which is supposed to sit down in the lip of that. There is a notch here and a notch in this piece. Those two have to line up, and then the rest of it you're just making sure it actually sits down in that little valley that's there. And then carefully try to maybe pop that on. All right. That is the jet down in the bottom there. And here is your metering valve. You'd have in an Edelbrock, this would be like the big J metering valve, so you can kind of replace at will. This one just drops right down in the center. Lubricate piston rod lightly before installing. No other part of the piston gets lubricated. Well, that doesn't make sense at all, does it? And I don't know. I'm thinking this goes in dry, and I'm thinking they're talking about lubricating the inside of that piston rod, which would make more sense. Now again, on this part, there's another alignment notch, and make sure you clean this ring out because the alignment notch is over here. There is definitely a way this goes on. And make sure when you're doing this, you also get your metering valve to go right down into that jet, or your metering rod, not valve. Then you line that one up there. It should sit flush in that ring. Voila. And for the top of this, there is an alignment mark here and on the body of the carburetor, so that goes that way. Okay, I believe that they want to lubricate the outside of this rod for the fit into here. So, well, you know, this is basically an air tool. I'm thinking air tool oil will probably work. It does not specify, so we're just gonna use some air tool oil. Probably way too much. Put a little bit here, and rub that down with the finger. The rest of it's in here. Alrighty. I'm thinking that that's what they meant by that, so we'll go with that, and I'm happy. Okay. Make sure the spring goes there on the outside of it. And there you go. Nothing moved. Got that aligned. I'd have to look up a YouTube video. I'm sure you probably should do so as well, to maybe help you understand how this whole setup works. And then the inside of this is supposed to get filled with oil up to 1/4 inch of the top. This is a damper. I don't know how I'm supposed to determine 1/4 inch from the top. But sure, let's do this. Yeah, looks good to me. Okay. Oh, that's definitely damping. Perfect. Wow, that actually worked. Okay. Well, you know, something felt like that worked right. Okay, and then I'm just gonna snug that slightly. There we go. Okay, and then the damper, I think, makes this go up and down slowly. Look at that. Fancy. Yep, seems to work. All right. That is number 1, which is really number 2. Now, the only other oddity here is this is the base gasket they gave me to mount it to the intake manifolds. And if you look, that's not the same. I believe I need that. So I'm not going to use this. And again, this is a great example of why I told you to save your old gaskets if you can and don't break them. We're going to reuse this base gasket because I think that's not the correct one. So there we go. Carburetor number 1, which is really one for cylinders 4, 5, 6, is back together as it was taken apart, and well, it appears to look correct. So one more to go and then we'll put them back on. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and shut the camera off because you don't need to see me do this twice. All right, see you in a minute. Carburetors are back on. Second one is rebuilt, and vacuum hoses are hooked up, PCV system, bowl vents, and fuel lines. And the cool thing about this car that I just learned, because I don't know anything about this car and I'm kind of learning as I go, is this is the fuel pump. And what I have learned is that if you feel down right below it, you see this right here that I'm touching? That is a mechanical lever that's attached to the end of the fuel pump that is actually a prime. So I can go and go 1, 2, 3, pull up on it, and you're basically hand pumping fuel. I have filled those bowls up before I started this video. So now, by all means, this thing should start and it should run great. We'll see. 3, 2, 1. Well, I'd say that runs pretty good. Now before, it would backfire, so let's see what happens now. No backfiring. I'd say the carburetors are fixed, and that's one more thing done. And with those carburetors on, that ends this episode, and we'll see you next time.